But William Lethbridge, he never even came here. Like, he was in England the entire time, never set foot here. And now, here we are, Lethbridge.
My hometown messed me up. She won big on a Timmy's Cup. I heard about it at the Rotary Club. That's so Canardian. Still don't stop.
This is Canardian, the podcast gossiping about Canadian hometowns. I'm Katie Lohr, author of Pod the North, the newsletter for Canadian podcasters. And I am joined by a very special guest, Kels Valenzuela Delamarter. She is the host and creator of Queer in Alberta, the podcast celebrating the untold stories of queerness in, you guessed it, Alberta. Kels, welcome to the show.
Thank you, bestie. Who would have thought? Queer in Alberta, queer stories. I never would have got there.
Where is your hometown, and how would you describe the vibe of it in 5 words or less?
That is so hard. Well, I like to call the city of Lethbridge, Alberta home, and it's on Treaty 7 territory here, which is the home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, as well as the Otipemisiwak Métis government in the Alberta District Number 1. So there's such a rich history here that we're totally going to get into, but 5 words. Windy, first and foremost. I think that's the dead giveaway. It's one of the windiest cities in Canada, if not like top 3 or something.
We definitely have to talk about this. We have things to talk about. Like, it's,
yeah.
I don't want to say it's wild because it feels like a pun, even though it's not, but it's aggressive. Aggressive is the word I'll use.
Aggressive wind, for sure. Yeah. So wind would be the first one, windy. Second, I'm actually going to use 2 words. A friend of mine describes like the color of the prairies as prairie gold. That is a color that immediately stands out to me in this area. So wind, prairie gold, knocked you out of the park right there. Wow. She's kind of like... A really good friend of mine described it as like the Thursday night of cities. So we could say she's got like a Thursday vibe, and I'll explain that that means later. Then one more, I think.
I'm so excited already.
Right? Like, she's a gem. She keeps giving. But the 5th thing to
Windy,
describe Lethbridge.
prairie gold Thursday.
Yeah. And then I think just like really, however you can say it, like community driven. It is a very community focused place.
I love that you said that. I feel like I'm going to bring a really silly version of the community vibe to this that I'm going to apologize for in advance. But
Hit me with it.
Okay, first we need to here's my tourism board pitch of Lethbridge, Alberta. Okay. I'm going to catch your vibe about it at the end. So Lethbridge, Alberta, incorporated as a town in 1890 and then as a city in 1906, and a year later it adopted the motto Gateway to Opportunity. The population is somewhere around 106,000 people. It's the birthplace of Nobel Prize winner Bertram Brockhaus, who did stuff in like neurons or something. It's the home of the Whoop-Up Days Rodeo and Fair, and it's the home of the first ever Hot Sauce Expo in Western Canada. And it's widely recognized by its landmark, the Lethbridge Viaduct, aka the High Bridge, which is the longest and highest steel trestle bridge in North America. Lethbridge sits on the southern eastern side of Alberta, and because Toronto is the center of the universe, I have to mention Lethbridge is a 32-hour drive from Toronto for reference.
I mean, she's weirdly and beautifully queer. Like, it's kind of surprising. A lot of people won't expect that, like, this is a hub for so much arts community as well. And yeah, she's got some good stories. She's a fun time.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to combine our versions.
Right?
Of Lethbridge. It's funny because sometimes I worry a lot when I like put this show together because my perception of what I find about this place could be completely different from like what somebody who lives there knows about this place. I feel like we've both hit on a community vibe in a totally different way. So going forward, I almost want to challenge you to find the queerness in everything I say.
Okay.
Everything I mention, I think that could be a lot of fun.
Diva, this was made for me.
So I, too, have come up with 5 words to describe the vibe of Lethbridge. Let me get your reaction here. It is messy hustle culture in wind.
Yeah.
So let's unpack that.
Okay.
What is your first reaction there?
It's so funny because I get it. I don't know where you did your deep dive research, but she's accurate. Like there's like, I don't know, so many great local businesses and kind of like, again, art collectives and et cetera, where it's kind of fun because if you look at Calgary and Edmonton, these things are already in place on a bigger scale just because they're bigger cities, right? But in Lethbridge, that hustle aspect, I think, comes through because people are hungry for like getting those systems or those like spaces and collectives into play here in this specific place.
Oh, that makes me so excited. I just feel your love for Lethbridge so much. So it makes me very happy. Like, I feel like you found a really good base there. Also, you are like a community icon. So I feel like you're probably creating community there too.
Well, thank you. And, you know, that's funny to hear you say, because like, I feel like I came here for university, right? And so many people that move here, I think, get really excited to maybe leave and go back somewhere bigger. But the love for Lethbridge, it will sneak up on you. It will.
Okay, so I think the history of Lethbridge establishes like the messy hustle culture side of things. And it establishes that messy hustle culture, in my opinion, from my research, has always been a part of Lethbridge identity. Here is a little bit of the history to run you through like what I mean, because I feel like you'll see a theme here. So the first European settlement in the area was founded on business, hustle culture, right immediately. It was connected to the whiskey trade in the late 1800s. And a whiskey trading post was set up at Fort Hamilton, which is what would be the future site of Lethbridge. And it got the nickname Whoop Up, Fort Whoop Up, which apparently is like an old-timey word for celebration. So people are doing business, but also like living it up. So Fort Whoop Up was basically known as the center of illegal activities at the time, and the conflicting nature of the whiskey trade between the traders from the South and sort of like the faulty and probably drunk Canadian authority going on there who were trying to hold things down. This ultimately led to an all-out battle and the Cypress Hills Massacre, which is where a ton of Indigenous people lives who sort of got caught in between. This was like a huge massacre that had a huge impact on the area. So what you thought was great, let's reflect on our actions here, colonizers.
Big time.
So that's when the Mounties came in, because I guess the Mounties also were decided to make decisions around that time. They came in to stop the whiskey trade altogether and establish quote unquote order, and business was shut down. So this is the problematic, messy early stage of business rooted deep in Lethbridge's history. What's your reaction to this?
I am kind of chuckling to myself a bit, Katie, because there is some Lethbridge Kelsey lore that's coming out here that I don't think you're familiar with. Fort Whoop Up that you're talking about, I worked there for a summer.
Way.
I did. So I worked there as like a historical fort interpreter.
So you 100% know way more than I do.
Oh, very familiar. Very familiar, especially with the period attire and dress, which I always thought was really funny that we were going for historically accurate with that, because I was like, I'm Filipina. Like, this is not historically accurate to begin with. I wouldn't be here. But I worked there for a summer. So this whole history of like the whiskey and firewater is what it was called back then. The firewater trade, like super familiar with it. And it was nasty stuff. Like it had things like red ink dye, sometimes a tincture of opium, like sometimes rat poison.
Oh my God.
Yeah, if you ever come and visit Lethbridge, you can still go to the fort. And the reason I recommend it to people now is my good friend, Kamina Weasel Moccasin, is the Indigenous curator at the Galt Museum and Archives. And she's really helped to like reestablish the Indigenous history of like the fur trade, the whiskey trade, all of that kind of stuff, and bringing that back into the space.
So you know the history of like intense business lifestyle. The area was at first called Sikokatoki. It was called that by the Blackfoot, which had a meaning for Black Rock, because of the sheer amount of coal in the area. So the discovery of coal, despite the whiskey trade ending, white men love a business opportunity, so they hopped on that coal right away. This was a huge deal, and Lethbridge ultimately became a coal mining community. A whole bunch of coal-themed communities popped up in the area, places including Coaldale, Coalhurst, Diamond City, and Iron Springs. And Lethbridge was even called Coal Banks before it was officially changed to Lethbridge in honor of William Lethbridge, who was the original shareholder of the Northwest Coal and Navigation Company, which basically ran the town. So it's named after a businessman.
And do you want to know the most gaggy thing about the fact that it's named after William Lethbridge? This is more of like my museum and heritage background, but William Lethbridge, he never even came here. Like he was in England the entire time, never set foot here. And now here we are, Lethbridge.
The other crazy like capitalist part of this, but like maybe it's an oligarchical part of this. Interestingly, at the time, naming streets and towns after investors, which is who Lethbridge was, an investor, this was a widely used tactic by Sir Alexander Galt, who was the owner of the Northwest Coal and Navigation Company. So there are these names all over Canada just named after investors and business owners.
To be a white man.
This is the foundation of Canada, I think, at this point. I think I'm just coming to this realization.
A little bit. To have the aura points of a white man in England. Like, wait a minute.
So the coal industry at the time, it was the turn of the century, and it produced 300 tons of coal a day with a peak during World War I. And as the mining industry grew, so did the population. And so it kind of like grew around it and a whole business supporting a community. But you know what else? Kels, you know what else Alberta has a plentiful resource, I'm doing air quotes, of? Dinosaur bones.
Oh, I was going to say audacity.
So after the First World War, there was increasing industry interest in oil and natural gas production. And so that replaced all of coal. And so the last coal mine was closed in 1957. So business is closed again. And now there is said to actually be a whole bunch of mines like underneath the city of Lethbridge. I don't know if this is true. Do you know this to be true?
Mines underneath Lethbridge?
Yeah, like tunnels and stuff.
Well, there's definitely tunnels.
Oh, yeah.
But the ones like that I'm familiar with are more so from the history of Prohibition. I don't know if you're going to touch on that. But
no, I wasn't planning on it. Do tell.
Oh, big time. Like even there's a really fun acoustic lounge and bar that does like cool shows in the city.
Ooh.
They moved locations during the pandemic, but their original location is like a historical building. And literally you can go down and see some of the tunnels that like people would use. And I might be wrong on this, so those that are like smarter about it, feel free to call me out. But I think they were also used for a bit of prostitution as well, because there was a huge red light district in Lethbridge as well.
That makes sense. It was the hub of illegal activities. What else would you expect?
The Berta Special. Why not?
So now that you know all of this, like basically the whiskey, you already knew all this. You already knew all of this. How are we going to add a little bit of queerness to all of it?
I got you immediately. You mentioned Sir Galt, which again, I worked at the Galt Museum, named after him. My friend is actually, she works at the museum still, and they have also done like this amazing queer history tour where they walk around downtown Lethbridge and go to all the different spots. And they have done some research on Alexander Galt's son, I think. And part of why he was sent out here was because he was having too much fun with like the boys that he would hang out with. And so it's never been confirmed officially, but as any queer historian will tell you, if people are like, they're just besties, diva, they're not. Come on. You had to send him all the way here.
Also, sending him to Lethbridge, probably not the right choice. Sounds like a pretty rowdy place.
We've got it on lock.
I don't think there is any better motto for the city than gateway to opportunity. I think this is the first time I've said that in this show.
I would be remiss, and my girlfriend would never forgive me if I didn't share her personal slogan for Lethbridge, and it's Lethbridge, it's gayer than you think.
So it's all that, and as you mentioned, it's a buttload of wind. It was actually hilarious how much commentary I found online about how windy Lethbridge is. In fact, Lethbridge is home to the world's largest wind gauge, which is housed in the local visitors center. And it's like a wrecking ball / like pendulum looking thing. And it actually went viral because a local man wrote it in the nude to the Miley Cyrus song Wrecking Ball.
It's like they were asking for it. Like, especially as the music video is going viral, I applaud this local hero. Like, wow.
So here are some comments that I found online on the wind. People said, quote, I spent 4 years of my childhood in Lethbridge. One of my strongest memories is the chaos of garbage day. You would see black garbage bags suspended high in the sky, caught in the wind, and people were always driving around looking for their garbage cans that blew away. Is this something you've experienced?
I can confirm. Yesterday was garbage day, and some of them, they didn't survive. I watched. You just see them. It's like cow tipping, but with garbage.
Brantford is also kind of windy, but I don't think it hits these levels. But I have experienced like lost garbage bins numerous times. And it's not something you ever thought you would be thinking about in your life until it happens to you. You're like, where did my garbage bin go?
Or like encountering just hurricane level winds. It's not a joke. Like I think the other week it was like maybe 110 per hour.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just garbage bin level. A lot of comments about herds of migrating trampolines. Somebody said that there is seldom less than a stiff breeze here, which is such a funny sentence to me. Somebody said, ever had your car sandblasted? Ever used more fuel? Sorry.
Literally.
Ever used more fuel driving west than east? Those things happen here.
It's so true. And you don't get it until you're in it. I remember touring the U of L campus, like, you know, as a prospective student. And the 2 university guides that we had, we stepped outside and just got buffeted by this wind. And I looked at them and I was like, is it really like this windy all the time? Not even a hesitation. They were like, I'm not even going to lie to you, man. Like I've lived here my whole life. This is it.
This one guy said that Southern Albertans get it. My buddies from the north tell me that I now lean westward permanently when I walk.
Yeah.
So good. And it is so intense that some people actually claim they suffer from Chinook syndrome, which is like a combination of headaches and stuff.
Totally.
And just general all around shittiness from just like caused by wind pressure and the changes all the time.
You gain such medical vocabulary living here where you're like the altitude pressure or changing or whatever. And you complain about, you know, the headaches. Yeah, I get it.
You've answered my question already, but I prepared this one. How have you been personally victimized by the wind?
There's I don't know, like a whole list, man.
Would you go so far to say that Lethbridge wind is homophobic?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without question. Especially because she follows you. This is the thing. Like you think you go to Edmonton for a weekend or something that you're going to get away from it. No. The breeze, the gust, she follows you. There is no reprieve.
Okay, so I mentioned in my email to you just before we connected, that like there's just like a sheer amount of stuff that I found about Lethbridge. Like it's bananas. There's too many things. This place is so strange. It's like an alternative universe. And I think since you've told me about like the art scene, now I'm getting more of like a psychedelic vibe. Just like, I don't know, maybe there's some like woo-woo thing that's happening in Lethbridge to like make it, I don't know, just like an eventful city is where I'll leave it. So in 2015, musician Marilyn Manson got punched in the face by a local resident at a Denny's at like 2 a.m. After he allegedly insulted a woman. And I think it was like her husband who punched him in the face, which, listen, that's my man. That's my man.
I was going to say, if he wanted to, he would.
Exactly. I mentioned the bridge in the early 1900s. During the construction of the bridge, apparently a teenager who worked on it fell off and lived. And it's like crazy high. Like just the boy who lived.
Literally.
Yeah. And Lethbridge is named in like a bunch of like the Simpsons episodes. So like what's your take on why Lethbridge is like such a part of the cultural zeitgeist?
I mean, she's an icon. She's a legend. She is the moment, I fear. Like, it's such an interesting little hub where, like you say, the craziest stuff happens, great people, and it's a beautiful city, even if sometimes you do wish there was a bit more to do.
So I mentioned messy hustle culture. I believe this has been haunting Lethbridge since its inception. It's like a dark cloud telling everybody to grind, but at the center of it all, nobody really wants to. Do you feel the pressure to hustle all the time?
Yes, but that's because I'm an immigrant.
Okay. But do you feel at your heart you don't want to be hustling?
Again, I'm the wrong person for this. I feel like for everybody that's listening that's a second generation immigrant or something like that, like I've talked to so many people where that hustle kind of feeling, it's like baked into our DNA.
Okay, so you feel this. You don't know where it comes from, but either way you identify. But okay, I do have two stories to tell you about why I think like Lethbridge has just a vibe of like, you must perform, but everyone's like, ugh, like has this sense of resentment for just constantly trying to perform.
All right.
Here is the first story that I have to like prove to you to prove this thesis. So first, I want to talk to you about Dar Heatherington. What do you know about Darlene?
Absolutely zero. So this is exciting.
Oh, I'm so excited, Kels. So this Dar was a Lethbridge city councillor in the early 2000s. At the time, she is a 40-year-old working woman. She's married. She's a mother of 3. The early 2000s were like an intense year for women because like if you had like a tiny little bit of like belly fat, you would get like criticized online. Like
this women, I remember.
Yeah, it was a toxic culture for women, like so much pressure to perform is what I'm getting to.
For sure.
And Dar is a married woman. She's a city councillor. She has 3 kids, and it's the early 2000s.
She's a girl boss.
It's too much. So May 2003, she's in Montana with her husband on a political junket, like a Canadian political junket.
In Montana?
In Montana. I'm like, that's so weird.
Very
Don't know
Darlene.
why.
Good for her.
Okay, Dar. On the morning of May 3rd, she is suddenly nowhere to be found. She has gone missing.
Not suspicious at all.
Yeah. Her disappearance results in an international search and rescue mission. This is between Canada and the U.S. at this point, right? So just 3 days later, though, she is found alive and well in Las Vegas, claiming to have been drugged and sexually assaulted and kidnapped. Kels, what kind of sicko kidnaps a city councillor?
There's not even an answer for that. I'm very suspicious, very on edge. What's going on? Where's the story going? From Montana to Lethbridge to Vegas?
To Vegas. Okay. So the morning of her disappearance, her husband is already home in Alberta, and she called him to let him know that she wouldn't be able to make it to their daughter's piano recital that night. Police discover that she also cancels a morning meeting, spends the day shopping for gifts for her children, and then also buys a bike from a pawn shop.
What you doing, Dar? What you doing?
Later, her rental car is found in Montana with her purse and her shopping bags inside, and the keys are hidden in the back tires. And this is just 6 blocks away from the pawn shop where she bought the bike. Then, 3 days later is when she's found in Vegas alive, wandering around in the valet area of Treasure Island, just like disoriented. When Las Vegas police found her, they also say that she was alone, argumentative, and refused to be examined at a hospital. She told officers that she was too tired to speak to them. So once she's found, she conducts an interview with the police. They're like, what the heck happened here? Why did we find all these things as you've been gone for 3 days? Why don't you want our help? Like, what is happening? And so she conducts an interview with the police, and almost immediately the police smell something is fishy, and they discover that her story was completely fabricated. Mostly due to the fact that she keeps changing what her story is.
That would do it, wouldn't it?
So, like, what do you think her story is at this point?
I don't know. She's a mind far beyond me. I am so excited to see what she's concocted.
She's a city councilor. She goes, like, she's back and forth from Montana to Vegas and, like, buying bikes from pawn shops.
Espionage. Like, give me something so good.
Okay, so at first she claims she was abducted. Mm-hmm. Then she tells police that she met an Albertan man while she was in Montana. And she says that because she knew the mayor of Las Vegas, she just wanted to get away. So she hitched a ride with this man to Las Vegas.
Who is this, like, international delegate? Like, is she working for some freaky version of the UN? Like, what is her agenda here? She's from Lethbridge.
She's just a girl from Lethbridge. Like,
she's just a girl.
Dar. So she also can't explain what happened to the guy who drove her to Vegas.
He's irrelevant. She's the main character.
So the day after they find her, she's charged with making a false statement to police, which could possibly result in a fine of $500, 6 months in jail, or both. And the next year, she is found guilty of public mischief. So although required by law to resign from her job as a city councilor, she initially refuses to do so and says she's going to fight it and find justice. Even though, like, she has basically like admitted to lying and just, like, causing mischief.
Why do I have any imposter syndrome in my life? Why do I doubt myself when there are people like Dar out here fighting, like, criminal charges?
I did nothing wrong. I should be a city councilor still.
I need that level of self-assurance.
And then eventually, because of public pressure that she was getting, she does announce her resignation and says that she's going to use this time to prove her innocence. Yeah, this was early 2000s. I haven't seen any follow-up stories about this, but she received a 20-month sentence, which looked like 8 months of house arrest, followed by 10 months of curfew, and then 100 hours of community service and counseling. Honestly, I feel like that's the correct sentence.
Yeah.
Like, stay home, figure your shit out, and do good things in the community. Like,
that's so wild. Now, also, I'm not here to, like, endorse crimes. Let that be known. But come on, public mischief. It's kind of a slay. Like, it's kind of fun.
All she kind of did was just, like, mess around with people. It wasn't that serious.
Wasn't it deep?
You know what? At the end of the day, she did.
Are we defending her?
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, all she did was she got a 20-month conditional sentence just for, like, wasting people's time.
For lying, for being a little shit disturber.
For being a little liar. So, Kels, it seems like for a moment there that Dar, from my opinion, was up and ready to leave her hustle culture life, the pressures of being a modern woman at any point. She was just ready to go. She was done. She was like, I'm done. I'm out of here. And then last minute, she has a change of heart and she decides she's going to, like, fake something to, like, come back to her regular life and not leave her husband and her kids forever. She's like, oh shit, no, I went too far.
Yeah, consequences of my actions.
I could have just talked to a therapist. Like, this was a bit much.
So much easier.
So, like, first of all, what's your analysis here? Like, do you think I'm on par with my theory? And second, like, is this all a result of Lethbridge hustle culture?
No, I think she's one in a million. I think she is a special case. So glad I got to hear her story, but cannot relate, Dar. Cannot relate. Like, therapy is so much more accessible, Diva. You don't have to go all the way to Las Vegas. You don't need a bike at a pawn shop to leave on the side of the road. Like, this is a call for help.
I read, like, I was trying to figure out where it fit into the story, but there was, like, a detail about how, like, she bought the bike and said that she just wanted to, like, bike up and down the river, like, in Montana.
Oh my God, she is literally the final boss.
No sense.
Like, final boss, pixie manic dream girl. You could say it's like a consequence of the early 2000s pressures that were put on women, but also I feel she needs accountability here because she took too long to admit her wrong in the first place when she wouldn't step down. I'm not giving her any extra.
Okay, so I fear that this portion of the podcast is where things might get a little dark, so I apologize. It just happens because we're talking about the police. I have to bring them up, and you can't help but like sometimes get a little upset. You talk about the police. So if that happens, it's totally okay. So I bring this up because I feel like the pressure to perform just keeps tanking the integrity of the Lethbridge Police Department. We already know the police can notoriously make sketchy and highly detrimental calls. But for a while, Lethbridge Police in particular seemed to be trying like way too hard in the pettiest of ways. And for that reason, they've faced a number of controversies over the last handful of years. And I have a timeline of events to share with you. Mm-hmm. So 2017, 2 officers just decide to go rogue and decide that they're undercover spies.
This is about Shannon Phillips, isn't it?
Yeah. So please bring in everything you know. So 2017, 2 Lethbridge police officers are just like out and about in town and stumble across NDP party leader and environmental minister at the time, Shannon Phillips. And she is out dining with somebody that they don't recognize because you normally don't recognize strangers. Mm-hmm. These people already had a vendetta against her. I want you to guess what that is, and I think you might know.
I wonder what you're going to say because from what I know about it, it was kind of like very politically motivated and like an overreach of authority from the police. Like they didn't have the right to be profiling her in the way that they were.
100%. So their vendetta, according to like the CBC News article, was that she was campaigning for ATV regulation. And they were both owners of and part of an off-roading community. And basically she was campaigning like, we don't want these ATVs just like running around in parks, like possibly killing people. Like we need regulation of just like where they can drive, how they can drive, like, come on. So these 2 officers decide to take photos of her and the person that she's with and run her license plates and the person she's with license plate as if they're criminal suspects. And then they followed them around, literally like generally stalking them for a while. One of the officers later decided to post those photos to his social media and just like go off about her. And then like, of course, MP Phillips finds out and reports them to the Calgary police. What do you remember about this?
Well, I remember that even the conclusion of it was fairly recent, like within the last year or 2 with the investigation. And it didn't go the way that Shannon Phillips was hoping for. It was a really disappointing ruling.
Calgary police obviously uncover, because they are reported, they uncover illegal plate searches, and then they turn that over to Medicine Hat Police, who later finds out that who later puts the police service under investigation. And that's when it's discovered that Phillips's name has been searched 8 times by 5 other different police officers and a civilian employee who are all just like snooping around and trying to like dig up stuff on her and generally just doing this for like gossiping purposes. And eventually this led to the 2 original officers only getting temporary demotions for 1 and 2 years. So that's what I know to be the end of it. What else is there to know?
Yeah, well, it's been a while since I remember because it was like really big in the news here that this happened to her. Because like I said earlier, it's a huge overreach of power and authority.
Oh, yeah.
Just because you don't like someone's politics or what they're doing doesn't give you the right to suddenly run all of this like search into their history, to stalk them, to follow them around. And I think any Albertan should be concerned about that when that happens with the police. But what I do know, and I would want to be cautious in saying this, but Shannon Phillips has since stepped down as our MLA, and she did fantastic work within that role. She was a huge advocate for Lethbridge. But one thing she discussed publicly was kind of like the pressures that are put on women in politics in the Alberta legislature today. Yeah, there's so much. Like I'm quite familiar with a lot of her career, like even Did you ever hear about when she was in the Alberta legislature advocating and like speaking passionately about a bill or an issue, and somebody from across the floor was like, "Settle down, kitty"?
Oh, yeah, I did hear about this.
Like, so she had so much of that stuff happen in her time. And so I thought it was really, really powerful when she was transparent about like, this is why I am taking a step back from politics.
So after that, 2021, do you know about the Stormtrooper incident?
Oh, yeah. That also made, I think, international news with maybe William Shatner even tweeting about it and being like, Lethbridge Police, you suck.
So 2021 rolls around, Stormtrooper incident. So someone who has clearly been living under a rock for like 50 years calls the Lethbridge Police twice, reporting a person in a Star Wars Stormtrooper costume who is also carrying around a firearm on 13th Street. So officers arrive to the scene and tell the person to drop the weapon and get on the ground. And the person complies. They drop the weapon. They get on their knees. But that's when Lethbridge Police say that person seemed too unresponsive to their demands and seemed like they were like looking for an opportunity to escape. And that's when the police force them to the ground, handcuff them. And once they remove the mask, they discover that it's a 19-year-old woman who is an employee of a nearby Star Wars-themed restaurant, which features specials like the Yoda soda. She was just out there waving at people and encouraging them to come to the restaurant. And the gun was a plastic toy, like a plastic Star Wars blaster, which like, I don't know, I feel like these are pretty recognizable. They look pretty freaking sci-fi. Like, So this was all filmed by bystanders, and the police were like too aggressive than they needed to be. The woman was like sobbing the entire time, like petrified. And there ended up being an internal investigation into police misconduct in an effort to avoid perception of bias and conflict of interest. And so the officers were found not guilty for the following reasons. When officers arrived to the scene, they confirmed that the subject of the 911 call was carrying what appeared to be a real gun and was in the parking lot with no signs, music, or activity to suggest that officers should not take the potential threat seriously. The action of the officers was consistent with use of force policies and protocols to respond to calls potentially involving firearms in a tactically safe manner for all involved. And the time between officers arriving on the scene and the woman being handcuffed was 2 minutes and 20 seconds long. The time from the woman being handcuffed to standing with the handcuffs removed was 2 minutes and 45 seconds. William Shatner did not give a fuck about that. He was like, rifles drawn for a plastic toy cosplayer, didn't comply right away. Are you blind? Watch the video and see how quickly she complied. She complied. This cannot be covered up. So William, truly coming through for the city of Lethbridge.
And like, oh man, you're making me realize how much I know about Lethbridge, which is really funny. And like some of it just from living through it, right? But I can't remember what it was called, some kind of galactic cantina, right? The Star Wars themed cafe. And part of why she was out there, because she wasn't out there like every day kind of thing. I'm pretty sure it was because it was May the 4th, which for people that love Star Wars, they're like, May the 4th be with you. So it was like this whole promo that had a larger culture that if anybody just took 2 seconds, you could see what's going on, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Just like, take a second to like check what day it is at the very least. Like just too damn far, taking it too freaking far. So after those 2 main incidents, Alberta's justice minister has to basically give the Lethbridge Police like a stern talking to. And he says, it's clear to me that what is going on over there is unacceptable and they understand that they need action right away. I don't know if he does anything about that. He's just like, don't do that. We don't like that. That looks bad for us. At that point, I feel like the police just like give up trying entirely. And they take this as a sign to kick back and fuck around. And Kels, what happens when you fuck around?
You find out.
Yeah. So first, your reaction.
Good. You lined that up for me so good.
So first, what's your reaction before I tell you about how they fucked around and found out? Like, what do you say to the Star Wars story?
Well, it's ridiculous. Like it's not a funny take, or a hee hee ha ha. But
I told you things might get serious,
right? Like I remember seeing the Facebook videos, and I think at the time even the owner posting about it on the business's Facebook. And yeah, I just felt immense empathy for that teenager that's just working your part-time job and then now experiencing something so traumatizing. So that's something like a huge conversation about excessive force that's not appropriate to the situation.
Yeah, too damn far. Too damn far. This leads me to 2022, when a Lethbridge police officer is fired over memes. But it's more than memes.
I haven't heard of this before.
More than memes. So 2022 rolls around, and it's uncovered that 5 officers of the Lethbridge Police Department have a group chat called Meme Militia, which has been spanning for the last 6 years, where they've been sharing inappropriate images, racist and sexist and homophobic messages to each other, all targeted at like executive members, officers, government officials. And also memes of like the faces of senior staff members pasted onto Toy Story characters. It must be more than that, but it is the strangest description.
Somebody's Canva account is working overtime.
So remember how I said at the heart of Lethbridge is that like nobody really wants to work that hard? This is where they took that too far. They were like, you know what? We can just fuck around and like do whatever we want and be problematic on the clock. So yeah, people called this moment Memegate scandal. And eventually the lead guy of this Facebook group chat was ultimately fired. So Kels, what is your advice for the Lethbridge Police Department in getting its act together?
Oh my God. What a question, Katie.
If you were Alberta's justice minister, like what would be on the agenda for a shape-up intervention?
First of all, don't arrest a stormtrooper on May the 4th with her plastic toy gun. Like, unbelievable. There definitely needs to be these conversations about how the police engage with communities and de-escalation and diversity. Like those are really, really important things that we need to continue prioritizing so that stuff like this doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's why I like to bring them up on my podcast. Casually, in fun ways, so people can be like, oh, that was entertaining, but I learned that these things exist.
Exactly.
Okay, on a final note before we get into your story, what's your advice to Lethbridge residents who are feeling burdened by the pressure to perform?
By the pressure to perform. Well, it's so interesting because I feel like, again, I'm surrounded by so many people that are just dreamers and creatives and community builders, right? In this space.
Maybe it's follow your heart, to be honest.
Follow your passion. And I think like it's so cool that this is a city that even if your passion is in film or something maybe a bit different, there's opportunity for it. And there's people that are excited to help you make those things happen. You just have to find them.
Okay, Kels, you have brought a juicy story about your hometown to tell me today. I don't know if it's real, if it's folklore, if it's something that you've totally made up. I'm going to guess at the end when you tell me. So please go ahead, spill your hometown tea.
The year with my queer theory mug. Let me just sip the tea. Thank you. The year is 2016 or so. I'm in university and I'm going on a few dates consistently with this girl. And she's telling me this story about how she did something called the Whoop Up Challenge. Have you ever heard of this?
Well, I know there's a Whoop Up rodeo, so I'm assuming that sounds like something that would happen at the rodeo.
So in the city, the city is divided by the Old Man River, and there are only 2 roads that can get you across there. There's Whoop Up and then Crow's Nest. But Whoop Up is the main bridge that everybody drives across. And along Whoop Up is a walking trail that's about, I think, 3K or something. And so most people are familiar with the Whoop Up Challenge, where it's just you start at one end. And again, this is a hill, diva. Like it's steep into the river valley. So you have to walk the whole thing. And for most university students, you do it drunk. And so that is the Whoop Up Challenge. But she gave me an additional layer to it. And I'm not sure if this was just her being spicy, but she claimed that she did it at night naked for 3K. Yeah, and that there used to be a University like of Lethbridge confessions page on Facebook. somebody saw it and like posted about it and was like, are you okay? Like, to the girl that did the whoop up challenge, I saw you. So that is my story about Lethbridge lore.
How long does it take to do like the whoop up challenge?
Oh, see, I've never whooped up. No.
Would you ever?
I mean, I think it'd be pretty. Like if you took it as a stroll, as a chill, like take a stop. God. But no, I have not done it drunk, nor have I done it naked.
I think no part of me wants to run up a hill while naked.
No, that's the thing. So maybe the years have made my memory foggy and she didn't do it naked, but I remember being so shocked. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
So did you go on any more dates after that?
No, but we became and are still good friends. Like,
Aww.
You know, you see each other in the community. It had a happy ending.
I love this. Well, I don't know if I believe it's made up or real. It feels like a Lethbridge thing to do. I'm going to say real.
Well, you're correct. It's real.
Wow. Oh my God. That is crazy. It adds an extra layer to it when you know that it's a real story.
When you talk about messy hustle culture, naked whoop up challenge, for sure.
There's nothing messier and nothing that will hustle you harder than running up a hill naked.
Cardio.
Yeah,
Cardio.
If that ain't hustling, I don't know what is. Like,
Once again, haul back to our girl Dar. Perhaps this is also a call for help. You know,
sounds like something that Dar would do, to be honest.
Probably.
Okay, Kels, thank you so much for coming on Canardian. Where can people find you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. 10 out of 10 blast. Always love getting to chat and kiki with you. But for folks that want to find me, of course, they can go and listen to Queer in Alberta wherever you get your podcast fix or on YouTube. Or in April, season 3, which we've been filming for the last few months, is making its debut on TELUS Optic TV. So that's free to TELUS subscribers across Canada.
I'm Katie Lohr. You can find me and all my links in the show notes as well. And make sure you subscribe to my newsletter, Pod the North. The Canardian theme song is by my very talented partner, Mark Allen, with support from his hometown buddies, People Like Us. And if you like the show or you know somebody from Lethbridge, Alberta, please share it with that friend or like somewhere on social media. Otherwise, I will see you around town.
Lethbridge, it's gayer than you think.